most of the extinct species we know today, we have no idea how they disappeared. But for the last mammoths living on the planet, scientists discovered what actually driven them to extinction. Until rather recently, they were found everywhere across all of the continent in the northern hemisphere. During the Ice Age, the sea level around Beringia was a lot lower than it is today, because much of the ocean's water was taken up as glaciers, sitting on top of the continent. And this exposed the shallow areas of the ocean, creating in this part of the world a land bridge that connected Asia and North America. This land bridge was too dry to become glaciated itself, but sufficiently rain to produce a community of grasses, flowers and shrubs that supported much of the animals that we have come to associate with the Ice Age, like woolly rhinos, bisons, different species of cats, and horses. Today Beringia looks like this. The diversity has unfortunately gone, but crucially, is still cold, which is good for the preservation of genetic material. Studying the well-preserved remains of animals found across the years, we know now mammoths, for much of the last million years or so, were distributed across the northern hemisphere. But over the course of time, that range slowly shrinked, smaller and smaller as population disappeared, until around 8,000 years ago, when only two populations of mammoths remained. One on Wrangel Island, about 150 kilometers off the coast of Siberia, which went extinct around 4,200 years ago, and the other one on St. Paul Island. This population was the second last to go extinct, but little was known about this, so paleontologists went there in an expedition to try to figure out when and why they died out. During the Ice Age, St. Paul was actually connected to the Alaskan mainland, and then, over time, the sea level rose and St. Paul became smaller and smaller and more isolated. Mammoths were the only large animals to be confined on this island, so there were no predators, nor humans who arrived there just a couple of hundred years ago, and yet they became extinct. But why? There is one lake only in the island, which is the one source of fresh water available. This means that all sorts of animals will come up to it and wander in to drink that fresh water, and when doing so, they'll deposit their own DNA. Every year, that genetic material would sink to the bottom of the lake, and then it freezes. And the same will happen every year. So over time, you'll get DNA accumulation of everyone that was present on the island from the past to the present day. So during winter, paleontologists went out in the middle of Lake Hill, and they drilled a long core through the lake all the way to the bottom, and they extracted that long column out of it. They took it to their lab and split it in half. The very bottom was 17,000 years old, and they started to look for a fungus called Sporomiella, which only grows in feces of large mammals. This means that in case the fungus would have been present in the samples, even in absence of mammoth DNA at that time, the animals were around, because at the time they were the only large animals present. So they found out that mammoth DNA was present all the way from the bottom until around 5,600 years ago, and the same for the fungus, and then gone. So now we know when they got extinct. But why? Paleontologists looked at the vegetation and nothing changed, so they didn't run out of food. But 5,600 years ago, the water chemistry in the lake changed due to a drought, and the lake started to dry out. Sea salt infiltrated, and with no new rainwater to balance it out, it became salty. Mammoths in St. Paul ran out of fresh water. and because they were surrounded by the sea, they became extinct. There are 20 species of Sengis in the world, and the Somali Sengi is one of the most mysterious.